It's October 15th, 2019. All right, this is the story of how I faked having a heart attack when the probation department tried to arrest me and I escaped out of the hospital. All right, so in the last story I posted, I had a warrant put out for my arrest in 2017 because I went to go see my grandmother who was dying, and my PO wouldn't let me go see her. And so I had to make that choice of either not going to see her and living with that guilt or going to see her and going to jail. And I made the latter choice. And I'm glad I did because I got to spend 3 days with her. I got to see her, talk to her, and then I got to go to the funeral and stuff. So after the funeral, I stayed down in Alabama for like 6 months. I lived in a sober living place called The Shoulder from like October till like December of 2017. Now, when that was done, I came back to Pennsylvania, and all right. So when you get arrested in Pennsylvania and you're on probation, you're held in jail on something that's called a detainer, and it's nearly impossible to get out. There's no bail, and basically you're stuck there until either your new case is resolved or probation decides to let you out. So it's a lose-lose situation. So I did see, when I was in there in 2016 after my mom died, I did see a guy get out under highly unlikely circumstances when he used this lawyer named James Tone, and he only paid $400. So I contacted that guy on Facebook, got the lawyer's information, contacted the lawyer, explained my situation. I'm like, look, I want to go see my dying grandmother. My PO was giving me a hard time. She put a warrant out for my arrest. So now when I was in this place, The Shoulder in Alabama, I did call probation. I spoke to some lady I didn't know and was like, look, I'm in treatment. And she asked me if I was out of the state, and I told her no because they'll use that against you. So my lawyer called I have a new PO at this point named Emily I'd never met. So my lawyer called me back. He's like, oh, you got this new PO. She's a straight shooter. I deal with her a lot. She wanted to know where you were because I guess there was a note from when I called. And so I was like, look, dude, I can get that information, but it's going to be proof I left the state. And I was like, they'll use that against me. He's like, no, they won't. And no, they won't. It's proof you're in treatment. So I contacted The Shoulder, had them email my completion letter to probation. So then my lawyer, this was like a month and a half process. I was up here when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. So he called me back and he's like, look, I talked to her. She said, if you go in there and everything checks out, then you're good. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm good? He's like, they'll lift the warrant. I'm like, that doesn't sound right, dude. So I called this lady myself. I'd never spoken to her before. I'm like, look, if I come in there, are you going to detain me? And she's like, if you come in here, she said also, she's like, and everything checks out, then we'll lift the warrant. And so, sorry, my roommate just walked in. I'm trying to record this in privacy, but it's all good. So I was like thinking in my head, like, why don't you lift the warrant and then I come in there? But it is what it is. I took the gamble. I knew my cousin's wedding was coming up, so I was a little weary about doing it then. I told my daughter, I said, look, if I go in here and I walk out and they lift the warrant, then I'll get a place and a dog. So I was supposed to go on March 21st of 2018, but it snowed, so they bumped it back to the 23rd. And so I go in there, I park my car. They had a new office in Lansdale. So I park my car at the library, I leave my keys under the mat, I deactivate my Facebook. I told some friends, I said, hey, if you do not hear from me, go get my car. It means I'm in jail. So I walk in there, and I already had a little anxiety because I'd stopped drinking the night before because I was drinking at this point in time. And but I wasn't court ordered not to drink. So I go into probation, I check in, it takes them like 10 minutes to come get me. I'm sitting up front. Now, no one walked out like a client, so the 10-minute stall, I'll get to that later. So she comes and gets me, I go into her office, sit down at her desk. This guy comes and sits down and blocks me in, all right? And he's the supervisor. So she said he was just going to sit, So I tell her what happened, what went on, and I was like, look, I don't have my own place right now. I'll get one if I walk out of here. I'll have all my mom's antique furniture. I'm not putting it in a place. And if I lose it, I go to jail. If I go to jail, I lose it all, like I did when my mom died and y'all held me in jail. I lost everything in my apartment. So like, okay. They're like, can you pass the drug test? I said, yeah. I passed the drug test. And then when I was done, they're like, okay, let's do the alcohol one. When's the last time you drank alcohol? I was like, I had a couple beers yesterday. And I was like, I'm not quartered not to drink. They're like, okay. So the supervisor leaves. Now, while he's gone, she's like, okay, well, when you leave here, just contact me. This dude comes in here talking about, oh, since we haven't seen you and you left the state, we're going to have to detain you. And he brings like 2 goons in with him. So they take my hoodie off. I'm like, fuck. And they put handcuffs on me. They take me to this little room. a holding room with it was like a cell with the window. My PO comes up with a little puppy dog face, like, I'm sorry, this wasn't supposed to happen. I'm thinking like, yeah, right, y'all set me up in a trap. And so after about 10 minutes, I'm praying. I'm like, God, how can I get out of this? Because I was having real bad anxiety. And I remembered my roommate from a recovery house like a year prior had told me when they tried to arrest him like this, he really started having chest pains, and they called an ambulance and let him turn himself in later. So I was like, fuck it, I'll try this. So I was like, I'm having chest pains. And so the dude comes up to the window, and I'm like, dude, I've had a heart attack before. I was like, he's like, are you on drugs? I was like, no. I was like, man, something's wrong with my heart. So the supervisor opens the door. He's like, I remember exactly what he said. He said, Mr. Lee, you're not getting out of this one. He's like, cooperation is key, Mr. Lee. He comes and he takes my cuffs and he puts them in the front, puts shackles on me. So I said, call 911. So they call 911. Paramedics get there real quick. There were ambulances there like 5 minutes. 2 paramedics come in. They're like, oh, what's touch? I was like, yeah, there, my left side of my chest. They're like, is your arm numb? I'm just saying yeah to their questions. So the supervisor's like, are y'all taking him? They're like, yeah, we're taking him. They bring the stretcher in. He's like, he said, this is going to determine how long you're in there. This is what the supervisor said, like real pissed. He's like, look, we're not going with you. Sign this saying you'll turn yourself in when you get done at the hospital. Now there's 3 cops there, though, that came with the ambulance, and the CO was there. That CO would have not, they must have called the CO as soon as I got there, in that 10-minute gap, and said, we got Mr. Lee up here, send a CO to come pick him up, because it would take like probably 45 minutes at the very minimum if they made that call for that CO to get up there. And that dude was up there in like 35 minutes. So and the supervisor says to the 3 cops, he says, he's got a warrant if you want to go with them and handle it like that. So I'm not out of the woods yet, but I got the cuffs off me. So they load me on the gurney into the ambulance. Now I get in the ambulance, now they're like, okay, what's going on? I was like, look, these motherfuckers just tried to arrest me. And my blood pressure was high. It was like 200 over 100. So they take me to the hospital, and I'm still not out of the woods, but I'm halfway there. So I get to the hospital. They put me in this room. I talk to the nurse. It's a male nurse. I talk to the doctor. Now, I see the cops from the hospital passing my room a few times. They never once came in and waited by my bed, but I could see them visibly passing my room a couple times. And so they give me an EKG or a heart thing. They monitor my heart, and then they gave me Ativan. Now, when I'm done, the nurse is like, okay. He's like, if you want to go with the cops, go this way. He's like, if you want to go, get out of here, come with me. I was like, what? I follow him, and he takes, I pass the nurse's desk. There's 3 nurses. They're like, yeah, like laughing and shit. He's like, go down this hallway, make a right. Now, I forgot to say this. On my way to probation, this car was in front of me, and it had a vanity plate, and it said hoodie on it. I was thinking, like, who put hoodie on a license plate? Now, when I'm in that hallway, I was like, oh, my hoodie, because when I take it off, they only saw me with a blue sweatshirt, and I had a black hoodie, so I threw my hoodie on, zip it up. I go out the back way, and I meander through the streets like 2 miles and get back to my car, started it. I didn't come back to Pennsylvania for like 6 months, all right? Now, I went to Alabama first, but I didn't drink or smoke a cigarette for like 30-something days when I got out of this situation. I had a whole pack of cigarettes and everything, didn't touch one of them. I went to my cousin's wedding. I was glad to go to that. I stayed sober. I didn't drink any alcohol. Now, I did start drinking again when I got to Colorado. I ate some like edibles. There were like sativa edibles, and smoked a bunch of this like really strong weed that gave me bad anxiety. So I did start drinking again. But my daughter stopped speaking to me for like 6 months. So that's really why I turned myself into jail. Like, I could have stayed on the run. I got pulled over twice and got out of those situations using fake information. So on September 21st of 2018, I came up, turned myself in, and I just got off. This has been 6.5 years I've been dealing with this shit. And this is all over a crime that I didn't even do. So I just felt like telling this story. And I hope y'all enjoy it and have a good afternoon.